Hi, it's Rick K. Jones. Welcome back to United Taste of America. Today we find ourselves on Rocky Top, the great state of Tennessee. Behind me is the famous Natchez Trace. It's a trail that begins just west of Nashville and runs all the way south to Natchez, Mississippi. Originally, it was a Native American trade trail, but later it became the path that then General Andrew Jackson, later President Andrew Jackson, led his men south to fight the British in the Battle of New Orleans in 1814. Tennessee was originally part of North Carolina, but in 1796, it became our 16th state in the Union. Tennessee is divided in three geographies. East Tennessee is Appalachia, largely settled by Scotch-Irish. Middle Tennessee is planting area. Before the Civil War, Middle Tennessee was really the breadbasket of the South because so many other states grew cotton. And then there's West Tennessee, the Mississippi River, Memphis, and the Delta. The mountaineers of East Tennessee did not want to leave the Union, but Tennessee did become part of the Confederate States of America. And some of the biggest and bloodiest battles of that war were fought in places like Franklin, Lookout Mountain, and Shiloh. After the war, Tennessee became famous for the TVA, which provided electricity for the rural South, and became even more famous for this thing we know as country music. Country music was first recorded in Bristol, Tennessee, and later became famous with a radio barn dance show called the Grand Ole Opry, making Nashville, Tennessee, Music City and the home of country music. In Memphis, we have two iconic recording studios. Stax Record was all about R&B, rhythm and blues, and soul music, with acts like Isaac Hayes, Sam and Dave, Otis Redding, and the Staple Singers, while Sun Records pioneered rockabilly with artists like Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Johnny Cash. When you think about the dishes of Tennessee, you think about the three regions. In eastern Tennessee, in the Appalachian area, the mountain folk serve things like cured country ham, chicken and dumplings, butter beans, buttermilk, and cornbread. In Middle Tennessee, they're famous for hot chicken, first created and still served at Prince's Restaurant and at other places like Hattie B's. Then there's the classic Meat and Three Cafe. It's a place where you get one entree and three vegetables with some sweet tea. Tennessee's also famous for two confections, the Goo Goo Cluster out of Nashville and the classic Moon Pie out of Chattanooga. And then there's Memphis. And when you think about Memphis, you think about barbecue. Things like dried rubbed ribs at the Rendezvous, or Cornish hens at the Cozy Corner, and barbecue pork at many, many other places. But there's one dish that's famous all over the state. It's the classic Southern biscuit. This biscuit is made with flour, butter or lard, milk or buttermilk, and it's served in a variety of ways. A ham biscuit, a chicken biscuit, maybe biscuits with gravy, maybe sawmill gravy, cream gravy, or even red-eye gravy. But it's really good with just butter and jam, and I know the perfect place where they make the best biscuits I've ever had. It's the Loveless Cafe in Nashville, Tennessee. Here with Chef Scott Peck at the Loveless Cafe. Scott, thanks for having us today.
Hey, thanks for coming out, Rick. I appreciate you coming through.
Well, this is one of my favorite restaurants in the world, one of my favorite places, and you've been here quite a while. Talk about a little bit about the history of this place.
So, the Loveless came to be in 1951. It was just a little house that Annie and Lonnie Loveless owned, and right here off of Highway 100, and this is before the days of the interstate. And what they sort of found was there wasn't really much to eat driving down Highway 100 between Memphis and Nashville, and people would pass through and be looking for anything they could possibly get. So Annie started serving biscuits off of her front porch, And quickly she started serving fried chicken off the front porch, and things just sort of snowballed and escalated from there. Eventually she moved people into her front little dining area. The menu sort of grew a little bit, and it kind of just kept growing, and it's sort of how we wound up where we are today. Even along the way, they built some little motel rooms around the main house and the restaurant itself, so people had a place to stay when they were passing through. They started doing more breakfast meals and started doing country ham. So next thing you know, they're making country ham from scratch in one of the little side shacks. They were, with the biscuits that she was already making. I think she started off making the peach preserves, and then a few years later started making blackberry, and then our newest flavor, strawberry. We've been making it for about 50 or 60 years. And things just kind of kept growing and growing as demand and more people sort of came through.
Well, it's interesting that one of the common denominators seems to be they did everything from scratch.
They did. They did everything from scratch. We still try to do everything from scratch. No shortcuts. We take pride in what we do out here at the Loveless. It has been successful for a reason, and we try not to mess with that.
Well, you're open a lot of days. Talk a little bit about that.
So we are open 363 days a year. We close for Christmas, and then we close for one day in January, so we can do some real good deep cleaning. We have a lot of people come through, so we got to refinish the floors, and unfortunately that's something that takes a little bit longer than an afternoon to do.
Yeah. Well, you're famous for biscuits. Biscuits are such an iconic item in the South. And you make biscuits that are, in my opinion, the best I've ever had, the best in the world. But what is it about a biscuit? Biscuit screams hospitality.
So, there's definitely a lot of biscuits in the South. Not all the biscuits are good. I think the Lovelesses are probably some of the best. What screams the South about it is it's good for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's good for a snack. You add a little sweetness to it. Now you've got a little bit of a dessert. It sort of fills all the gaps and all the roles there. And I think in the South in particular, a lot of us have memories of somebody in our family making some biscuits from scratch. And, while their biscuit may not have been good as the Loveless biscuit, it was really good to them. And, it brings that little bit of, I would compare it to like grandma, to them.
It's interesting. I think it was in the 1950s, there was a comedian named Andy Griffith, and he recorded an album called Pass the Biscuits, Please. And the idea was that he could not eat without bread.
Yeah.
And the joke is, by the time the biscuit basket got to him, finally, it was empty.
Yeah.
And he was very, very disappointed. I love biscuits every way. I mean, you can have them stuffed with meat, like sausage, or in your case, great country ham. Mm-hmm. You can have it with gravy. Talk about some of the gravies y'all make here.
So we do a wide variety of gravies. We've got your classic sort of white sawmill gravy. We've got brown gravy and sausage gravy. Do a little bit of chicken gravy. If we're doing fried chicken, still great on the biscuit. And then probably one of the more iconic gravies that we do is going to be our red eye gravy.
Yeah, talk about a little bit about red eye gravy.
So, red eye gravy, the country ham is an important part of the red eye gravy. That's where it all sort of starts. We start off by searing off that country ham, and then you come in with a little bit of black coffee, and that's going to be the base of your red eye gravy. We're going to do a little bit of other things to it, but that's not really something I can disclose today.
Yeah, well, you also make like you said, your preserves and your jellies. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our preserves, it's a very old school method. It is just fruit, sugar, and thyme. The guys who make our preserves, we don't just let anybody do that. It's not something where we can turn it on and set a timer and come back in 4 hours and it's ready. They have to hang out with it the entire time, keep it constantly stirring and moving. We don't want to scorch any of it. And to know when it's ready, you have to know when it's ready, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let's talk about the biscuit itself, because, flour in the South was relatively inexpensive at one time, not so much anymore, but at one time it really, really was. And so it was a staple that could stretch things. Mm-hmm. I've always said chicken and dumplings was one maybe old rooster that got killed, but then you put enough dough in there, you could feed an army. Everybody served biscuits because in a lot of ways it was a filler for whatever you had. But your biscuits are light and fluffy, so let's start with the flour. So it's a fine wheat flour?
It is a fine wheat flour, the whitest we can get our hands on. I think that means that it's going to be a winter wheat. It's low in proteins, and what that does for us is it gives us the most delicate biscuit we can really get our hands on. Now, the type of flour that we're using is usually reserved for like pastries and cakes and things of that nature, but it's the flour that we sort of started with, and it's the flour that we have stayed with. It's definitely not the cheapest option by a long shot, but it is an important ingredient when making the Loveless biscuit.
And then you use two ingredients that I think are essential in the South when you mix the batter. You use lard and you use buttermilk. Talk about that.
So, buttermilk biscuit, it is synonymous with Southern biscuit. They just go together. It is a key factor. We can't replace that with anything else. You try to use whole milk or heavy cream or anything along the lines, you're not going to wind up with the same sort of result. It brings its own sort of flavor to it. And then the lard, that's just bringing some fat into it. That really helps with that texture. It helps the dough seem or be a little bit more moist, and you just wind up with a light, soft, fluffy, moist biscuit. I think we've all had a dry biscuit before. That's not really a pleasant thing. I think the British call it a scone or something like that.
Exactly, they call it a scone, which means you need to dip it in a whole lot of honey or something to be able to eat it. Okay, and so you make a very wet dough, and then you set it aside.
We do. So our dough takes 24 to 48 hours to kind of fully go through its proofing and sort of fermentation process, where it'll double in size and then sort of come back down, and it'll be at a workable state. Actually, we have to sort of balance the dough a little bit, make sure that we're not letting it sit for too long, but we also have to make sure that we're letting it sit for long enough. So it's a little bit of a game we play, trying to make sure we have that just right.
And then when you take it out, you put it on a table, or that's basically you put some flour down, and roll it out, and then you use a rolling pin.
That's right. So we still hand roll and hand cut every single biscuit we do. Actually, we hand mix our dough, and that also plays a little bit of a factor in the texture that we're getting with those final biscuits, because we're not overworking the dough at any stage. I've got a lot of biscuit rollers who've got some really strong arms from mixing a lot of dough. We're going through about 10,000 of these biscuits a day.
That's staggering. 10,000 biscuits a day. You're open 363 days a year. That's an ungodly amount of biscuits.
Yeah, it is certainly a difficult job, but we also just don't let anybody do it. Our biscuits are probably what we're most known for. We're known for a lot of other things, Southern food in particular, but the biscuits is definitely the big thing that everybody knows about the Loveless.
And then you use another wonderful ingredient, and that's butter. You use butter a lot.
We use plenty of butter when it comes to these biscuits. I was thinking about it earlier today. They get buttered no less than 4 times, maybe more than that. Butter is what we're going to use to keep them from sticking to our pan. We put butter on top before they cook just to help facilitate it. And for good measure, we're going to butter them one more time when they come out.
And then, of course, if they get to the table, I'm going to get the butter out and butter them one more time.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Well, Scott, thanks for having us today here at the Loveless and these wonderful biscuits. And thanks for being a part of United Taste of America.
Hey, Rick, I appreciate you coming out. And thanks for thinking of the Loveless when you were thinking about the best dish in Tennessee.
That's great. Thank you, pal.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. So that's a wrap from the great state of Tennessee and those yummy Southern buttermilk buttery biscuits from the Loveless Cafe. We'll see you next time on United Taste of America.